Okay, so first of all, thank you again for joining me today. I just want to ask you briefly, what are your hopes come January for the new Republican administration as well as President-elect Donald Trump?
Well, the Senate is going to hit the ground running. We're going to be in session for 10 straight weeks to confirm President Trump's nominees for cabinet positions and other high offices. That way, his team can hit the ground running and really make the changes that Americans expected when they voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly in November.
Definitely. And then thinking about some of those cabinet picks, I think a lot of people are interested in some of the more well-known individuals like billionaire Elon Musk or as well as Robert Kennedy Jr. Do you have any comments on his new cabinet picks and any messages to citizens of Wyoming about these individuals?
Yeah, and I want to assure Wyoming people that these are good picks. You know, you hear a lot about Robert F. Kennedy, and here he's anti-vax. He's not anti-vax. He's anti-vaccinations that have not been properly vetted, nor their capabilities disclosed to the American people. I think Robert F. Kennedy is going to emphasize childhood obesity, which is a long-time area of emphasis and interest for him. And it's certainly an issue that we need to tackle in this country. There's no reason that America should have the childhood obesity that it does. And it's really important that we attack it from here in Washington. And I'm going to meet with Pete Hegseth this week, Department of Defense, see if we can explore some of the um, issues that he wants to tackle as Defense Secretary. I know that people who serve on the front lines in the military know that he also served there and looks up to his and respects his ability to make their service in the military front and center. And we're going to really enjoy Doug Burgum at Secretary of the Interior. He's also going to take an overall portfolio of energy, which he's extremely capable of. He's a very high energy guy, very smart, very articulate. He'll hit the ground running at Interior, which is something we need in Wyoming. And then at Energy, Chris Wright, who's from Denver. I never met him until last week, but I've heard nothing but good things about him. I'm looking forward to meeting the Treasury Secretary nominee and other positions such as the SEC. Those have been very contentious areas that I work on the banking committee. But fortunately, we're vetting those people now. We'll be voting on them even before the president takes office on November 20th, because the Senate convenes on January 3rd.
Perfect. So going on, what do you think that President Trump's priorities should be, especially as they maybe relate to our state in Wyoming?
Well, he emphasized all along that in order to properly tackle inflation, we have to tackle energy. We have to make ourselves energy independent once again and energy exporters once again. So the fact that he has so highly prioritized energy is really good for Wyoming. We can tackle the Buffalo Resource Management Plan and the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan, both of which were drafted by people who are anti-oil, gas, and coal. So we need to get around to make sure those resources play the important role they always have in our ability to produce energy. And it's going to be even more important, Will, because artificial intelligence consumes a tremendous amount of energy. And if the US wants to remain the leader in AI, we've got to produce our own energy in vast quantities. So that's the most important thing he can do. And of course, the border. And by appointing Tom Homan as the border czar, he's got the best of the best, and someone who's extremely motivated to, as quickly as possible, remove the criminal element that came in our open border policies and make sure that our border is closed so we can begin working through the tens of millions of people who came here during the Biden administration.
Definitely. Perfect transition into my next question. Since he's leaving, what kind of legacy do you think Biden is leaving behind?
Well, from my perspective, his legacy has kind of been as a placeholder for progressive and liberal policies. And I think he proved that those policies failed. That you can't open the border to everybody who wants to come in and leave people who are trying to get here legally standing in line for years. That you can't clamp down our country from producing energy and expect us to remain the world leader. That won't happen. China will overtake us in a heartbeat on the energy front and on the artificial intelligence front. And so much of that artificial intelligence has to be deployed through surveillance and in intelligence gathering and defense that we have to be number one there. And Joe Biden allowed all of those matters to become second, third, or 10th or 20th place in his priority list. So this is going to be a tremendous turn for America. Earlier, you mentioned Elon Musk. Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy will be leading the effort to find waste, fraud, and abuse and to cut uh, spending that from this government that has got a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. It's bloated, it's exhausted, and it needs the energy of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to help us live within our means.
Definitely. And then, what do you think about President Biden pardoning his son? Do you have a comment on that?
You know, he lied about that all along. And the real, he's lied about so many things that it's not surprising that he lied. The surprise is the scope of this pardon. This pardon covers more than a 10-year period. And anything that might have occurred during that time, whether it was prosecuted or charges were brought or not. So that is an indication that he's not only trying to cover up for his son, he's trying to cover up for himself because the crimes that were committed involving Burisma and other efforts that Hunter Biden were involved in also came back to Joe Biden's pocketbook. So this is a sweeping pardon and truly offensive and should be a slap in the face to the American people. I'm sorry that this wasn't over sooner, meaning the Biden administration, but come January 20th, when President Trump takes over, we can start righting the ship of America again.
And thinking about pardons as well, President Donald Trump has just talked about pardoning some of those individuals involved in the January 6th insurrection. Do you have a comment along those lines?
Yeah, and who can blame him? My gosh, some of those people have been in jail for the entire 4 years since that occurred. Some of them were in there taking pictures. They entered the Capitol building illegally. They shouldn't have been in there. But to paint them all as violent insurrectionists is a complete misnomer. So I'm pleased to hear that President Trump will be allowing those people uh, to regain their normal lives to the extent possible.
Definitely. And since we only have about 7 minutes, let me just throw two more questions at you. One of the biggest things that Trump will be up against is these two military conflicts, Russia and Ukraine, as well as the war Israel and Palestine. What do you think needs to be done about the war in Ukraine, as well as the conflict in Palestine involving Hamas?
Well, I'm really pleased that President Trump met with Emmanuel Macron and President Zelensky while he was attending the Notre Dame reopening in Paris. I think that President Trump will be working with President Zelensky and President Putin to try to come up with an acceptable end to the war in Ukraine. So I think that's in much better hands than it's been in terms of the ability to wind this down in a way that is not perfect, but is acceptable under the circumstances. And then when it comes to Hamas, I think that President Trump will allow Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel to fight this war on their terms instead of forcing them to fight it with one hand tied behind their back. And the manner in which aid, USAID, is distributed around the world, it needs to be reformed. I'm sure that Marco Rubio will do that as Secretary of State, including the manner in which it's distributed in the war between Hamas and Israel. Israel had a horrific attack, over 1,200 people on October 7th, a little over a year ago. And they have a right to defend themselves and ferret out Hamas. And now that Hezbollah up in the north is being degraded, Syria has now fallen into the hands of the rebels, and Assad has fled the country. There's a realignment going on in the Middle East, and President Trump will be very effective in assisting those people to regain their own destinies. This is not the U.S.'s problem to solve. It's the U.S.'s problem to issue to help broker an acceptable solution and help those who've been so viciously attacked by their neighbors and supported financially by Iran. So I'm very confident that President Trump is the right person in these troubled times to take the helm of our U.S. Department of Defense and help with these international geopolitical issues.
Perfect. And then before I let you go, I just this is a pretty new piece of information. I'm sure you've heard about it. But this United Healthcare CEO being murdered in the streets of New York. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any comments? What are your hopes to be done about this?
Well, it sounds like law enforcement is closing in and has perhaps detained a person of interest. What I've heard is it's really interesting for someone of the United Healthcare's CEO's caliber to be walking alone without security in New York City. And especially someone who had apparently some veiled threats over the past few months. So I think it's going to force all of us, sadly, to be better prepared, to have better security, and have more awareness of our comings and goings in a really dangerous world. And that we have to get on top of the crime in this country. And that's another issue that President Trump ran on, and that I think he'll be addressing with Department of Justice nominee Pam Bondi and Kash Patel at the FBI. These are two quality people that will go in and remake these agencies so they're law enforcement and justice agencies and not agencies that focus on their political foes.